Hey everybody, it's the Ordinary Joe Show. Welcome to episode. I don't have a clue what episode number it is, but I'm totally happy to have you here anyway. I think it's number 10 or so. You're kind of like the anniversary episode, actually, Kris, if you're number 10. I think that's stellar. So,
Oh,
anyhow, I'm super excited to have my good friend Kris on the show here. And Kris and I have known each other for about 2 years, I think, exactly. Feels like much longer. It feels like 20 good years to me. Probably feels like 50 bad years to him. But Kris and I have been really good friends since 2 years ago. And we kind of met by accident, to tell you the truth. And so for those of you who don't know, I haven't told I was going to say for those of you who don't know much about my journey, but I haven't told that many people. But a couple of years ago, by pure accident, I ended up joining a kind of a support group for people who had experienced trauma in their life. And by chance, I did a call with Theo Fleury, a friend of mine, and I did a private call with him. Fantastic guy, Theo Fleury, if you're out there, love you, love you. And during this private call, which I needed some advice for, something that I was curious about, he mentioned that he had this group, and I snooped out his website after we did the call because I'm a snoopy person by nature, and I noticed that he had some online training. He had an online course that he had for sale on there. So that's what I do in my regular gig, is that I'm an online trainer. So I'm snoopy. So I bought his course because I wanted to see what kind of software he used to develop it. And so I bought the course, and as part of this course, he offered this membership to this trauma group, which I didn't really know anything about it, and I didn't even know what the hell it was. But he mentioned that they were doing this call, or I found out they were doing this call the next night. So I logged on to this call, and I had no idea what I was in for. And in my mind, I hadn't experienced trauma, so I didn't really need to be there, but I was curious, and this little gut told voice in my gut told me to join the call. And I was only going to stay for 10 minutes and check it out, and then I was going to leave. And I ended up staying for the whole call and meeting these amazing people in the call. And I never missed a call after that. And in that call was this good man, Kris. And Kris and I have been super good friends ever since. And I have to say, you have done nothing but inspire me totally with your commitment to your well-being and your healing journey and all the good stuff, how hard you work. And so it's a super pleasure, honor to have you on this show, because for many reasons, and I think the big thing is because I think there's a lot of people out there who are trying to work on their healing journey, who have maybe experienced trauma in their life. And like Theo says, we've all experienced trauma to some degree. We all have. It's the string that binds us all together. And maybe people who hear your story will be inspired to keep trucking and keep trying new things rather than just give up and feel that sense of hopelessness. So without further ado, Kris, thanks for coming on and horsing around with me for an hour. We're just going to visit and shoot the shit and talk about all things healing and wellness and all the good stuff. And yeah, maybe if you want to just kick things off and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and all that stuff, and just whatever you want about your journey.
okay, sounds good. Well, I'm really excited to be on here, and I'm honored that you asked me. And yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to know you as well. And wow, what a great group that was, though, with the trauma transformation group with Theo. It was a game changer for me. A lot of good stuff, and actually, that I get that started actually through COVID.
Yeah,
So I think it really helped us with through that as well.
I think so.
Yeah, and yeah, it allowed me to get comfortable because in the first, I was in there probably about 3 months before you came in, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would rarely say a word.
That's right. You, like, both you and Theo talked about how when you came, you never said a word. And the night that I came, you did talk. So I was super impressed. And I didn't know that you never talked. I thought you were like an old pro at it.
No, 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 no. So, well, by the end, then I probably couldn't shut up. But once I got comfortable, but it allowed me to safely share. different parts of my past that I wasn't able to in different platforms that I would share, like in about addiction and stuff. Um, but yeah, no, I guess so. I'll just dip into a bit of my story, I guess. So my name is Kris, and I grew up in Kenora, Ontario, um, God's country. We grew, or right on Lake of the Woods is where our house was. So we had a massive playground. It was all crown land, and you could camp wherever you wanted. And so with that though came a lot of freedom, and and in our day and age, we didn't like it was the type of thing where you could leave in the morning and come back at night, and nobody really asked what you're doing or what you were up to. You were just at a friend's house or something. So I got into drugs and alcohol very young. I was really two different people, because the sober version of me had no self esteem, couldn't look anyone in the eyes, and I really didn't feel good enough a lot of the time. So I was always striving to, like, always struggling with my inner self. But when I discovered alcohol at a young age, I just right away this made me feel different, and then eventually that led to getting into drugs as well. And then I had the combination. So basically, my main was cocaine and alcohol, and it just allowed me to be this person that was full of courage and would do anything, just sort of or made me feel like I fit in um, a lot better. But the thing was is that I would drink and drug to excess and then black out. But I would go on these missions in a blackout. Well, I had no idea in the morning what even happened, right? So um, now I had some trauma growing up, and a lot of that was based on like a psychological trauma, basically, because I would drink and drug and party and have fun, and then I'd wake up in the morning and forget about what I did, and then so a lot of my life I just lived through stories of what people said I did, and sometimes those stories were made up just to see what friends could get away with telling me,
Oh,
and some
wow.
of that stuff I found out in sobriety years later, because
Wow.
I got sober at 36. So um later on in life, like, I had some friends telling me, like, oh, remember this, like, that didn't happen, we totally made that up. But I had been haunted by things like that my whole life. So yeah, I would drink and drug and be this guy who didn't care, didn't give a shit about what I did. um I was never a tough guy, but I would feel like, oh, I got to fight, and then it didn't matter. I just wanted the marks on my face. I wanted people to see me as this crazy person, as opposed to being, hey, there's Kris. He's a drunk or a drug addict. Or
Yeah.
um, I learned early on that sometimes the crazier the things that you did, people would focus on that. Did you hear what Kris did last night?
Hmm.
He dove off a bridge. He got in a fight with this guy. It was just um, this craziness that went along with it, but then wouldn't remember a thing in the morning, and then would just go through this process of um, being haunted throughout the day of what I did the night before, and making up
Hmm.
stories in my head. What did I do? And trying to um, recount the night and see, oh, what did I do? Okay, I remember being here and this, and it's just this fear, and I lived in that fear for a long time.
Hmm.
So I um, I developed a certain skill set, and I found out that I was very good at a lot of different things, and so I always had strong work ethic. And back in the day, I would have said, oh, I had great bosses. Well, I think my work ethic and what I could accomplish superseded me coming in still half in the bag and
Yeah.
reeking like booze and everything else. So a lot of the times that was just bypassed and
Yeah.
kind of swept under the rug. So I got very lucky because I was always like out of high school, I was able to have good jobs and that moved me out west and touch a little bit on the oil rigs, and then I got to do some pretty interesting things and get away with my lifestyle. And so as that went on, um, I was able to maintain those jobs, and I had never been fired from a job. But I would always bounce around because I would make it so long and then be like, oh man, these people see what I'm like, or they're starting to talk about what I do in my off time, and so I better move and do a different job. And so I would bounce around a lot, and I was able to always find meaningful work. Um, but and I lived like that right from very young age, right to 36.
Mm-hmm.
But what changed there was I lost my mom to cancer about 11 years ago, and I was very close with her, and I could tell her anything, and it was very hard for me to uh, kind of deal with that. And I started drinking, drugging a lot, and I stopped caring, and that's when I started losing jobs um, for the first time in my life, and I just didn't care, and I really got to a point where I didn't want to live anymore because I was so sick of because all I wanted to be was drunk and high,
Yep.
and I needed to keep that, and I was able to develop like the body's a very strong thing because I was able to um, fill it with the drugs and alcohol and get up for work the next day and go and and did that for a lot of years until it got the better of me where I didn't want to get up anymore. I just would keep on drinking and drugging and as long as possible. And that led to um, causing, well, I caused a lot of heartache for my family throughout the whole process, but um, I was starting to be delusional. Nobody wanted to hang out with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I became friends with different TV shows so that I had someone to drink and drug with.
Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy and
Yeah.
oh, we hung out all the time, you know?
I get you. I get you.
Yeah. Or different movies where they were drinking all the time,
Yeah.
and just so I didn't feel like I was alone.
Yeah.
So it
Fair.
was a very dark place. And so that led to I was suicidal a lot, and especially when I was in the midst of the addiction, like I think I would have carried it out, but what I did was I was one of those serial phone callers when I was drunk. I was so sad all the time, and this didn't just happen in the end of my drinking career. This was throughout. I would always call the people I loved and ask for help in those
Yeah.
moments,
Yeah. Sure.
and it would be like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and whether they know it or not, it was all out of love. I trusted that person, and
Mm-hmm.
I needed to um, let them know. So often when I woke up the next day, I'd have no recollection of the phone calls, but then the phone would start ringing and are you okay?
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's like, oh man. So that became very psychological as well because I wouldn't remember what I told them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, yeah, and then I'll fast forward over to the end because that's the gist of that. And just I got to a place where I basically made a phone call, and I still don't know who this person is, but I said that when I was done drinking and drugging, I was going to end my life. And um, they contacted the police and they traced my phone,
Oh,
and the police
wow.
came and yeah, the police came and got me, and they were so caring about the whole thing because they could just see this person that was hurt
Mm-hmm.
and suffering, and they just wanted me to get better. So they brought me into the hospital and allowed me to get sober. So I got formed and um, got to see a psychiatrist at that point, and they suggested that like I wasn't ready yet at that point, so they suggested I go to detox and get straightened out. So for the first time in my life, I made that step, and that started the ball rolling to some meeting some very good people in my life, where they helped me get to where I am today, basically. And I started going to 12-step meetings, and I guess it would have been between the end of September 2014 to July 6, 2015, which is my dry date. I was in detox for 121 days
Okay.
throughout that period. I was
Yeah.
just a frequent flyer.
Well, it takes a while. Like, that's
Yeah,
understandable.
for sure. So um, I had overdosed a couple times, and um, I don't even think my family knows about that. I kept it very secret. But the only person that was there in the hospital was my friend Phil, who became my sponsor in the 12-step program. And I would wake up and wires hanging all out of me, and he's there, and I always had this smile on my face.
Hmm.
And he said my whole intention here is to wipe that smile off your face. He said, because no matter, he'll talk about that today. No matter what, I always had that smile on my face, and
Yeah.
because I was just unsure, and I always go to humor no matter what the.
Oh, you and me, brother. You and me.
Mhm.
That's our connection right there.
Oh, absolutely. So no
Yeah.
matter what the circumstance, it's right to that, right?
Yeah.
So, um, and yeah, so what I would have this routine of staying sober in the beginning for a couple months, and then celebrating my 60 days sober by drinking and drugging on the 59th
Oh,
day.
yeah. Yeah.
That's long enough, I would think, right? And
Yeah.
then so um and I was so petrified to talk to anybody. So in the detox center, like the counselors are trying to help you, and I just
Yeah. Yeah.
tight-lipped and no, I'm fine. But I would get this routine of going to the hotel, and I'd get the hotel for 2 nights, and I'd drink and drug, but I would either end up in the drunk tank or or being formed in the hospital.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the addictive mind, just it's amazing, because all I wanted was that drink and drug. So I'd be formed in the hospital, and if it's a 24-hour form, I would get out, and then I'd still have that hotel with all my stuff in it. So, and then I'd go and do it again and end up back there, right? So
Okay. Yeah.
just a vicious cycle. And um, so I continued on that routine, and then it was yeah, July 5th of 2015 was my last drink and drug, and um, I showed up at the detox center yet again. This time somebody else was driving my truck and drove me there. I still don't know who that is.
Yeah. So the universe cares. The universe
uh,
wants you to heal.
oh, absolutely. So it was actually a bit of a funny story after I got sober and I talked to the addiction counselors at that detox center, because the one fella, he he said to me, I said, how did I get here the next morning, right? Like, why am I here again? And he said, it's actually a cute story, Kris. He says, um, somebody drove you in your truck, and you still had some cocaine and some beers. And he says, you had 3 beers and they were locked tight in your arm,
Yeah.
and you weren't getting out of the truck. And the person driving kept pressing the unlock button, and I kept locking it because I wasn't done yet.
That's great.
So they literally had to wrestle them out of my arm as I'm crying, as if I'm
Yeah.
saying goodbye to a good friend,
Fair.
which
Well, yeah. Good friend indeed, though, right?
absolutely. So
Yeah.
um that started my journey to healing, because that morning I was just done. I was done with I I knew I was suicidal, and eventually I would either die of an overdose um or actually um commit suicide under the influence.
Hmm.
I knew I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. I just didn't know how to do that. And
Right.
being sober was so uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But with these people like Phil and other good friends that I met in the 12-step program, I just kept showing up and making mistakes, but kept showing up and suffering through, and actually picking up the phone and calling them. And when I wanted, or when I was ready to drink and drug, I'd pick up the phone and call first. And that's something I had never done before. So
Hmm.
um, they would talk you out of it or come and get you. Um, and it just started me on my path to healing. So in that process, again, just like Theo's group, I
Hmm.
wouldn't talk. I would just sit there, and eventually I got a little bit more comfortable. Um, my sponsor basically had to take me and guide me through like I was a child coming
Mm-hmm.
through, right? And it's all new things. So he's like, instead of, because at the time I was still a smoker, so he's like, instead of sharing war stories out in the smoke pit, telling about all the dumb things you did while you were using, why don't you try shaking hands at the door and saying hi to people
Yeah, fair.
and doing that. So I took his advice and started doing that stuff. So that started me on the path to being able to read some readings in front of people, and then eventually speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking became um, something I loved to do because it was so fearful getting up there at first,
Mm-hmm.
but then I realized that I'm in good company, and I was in a safe place and I could share that stuff. And that started the ball rolling to the next step and becoming, um, 1 year sober, and um, being able to be proud of that achievement and proud of myself for something that I accomplished for the first time in my life. So I continued into my second year of sobriety, and I saw all these other people that I started coming up um, in the 12 step rooms with, that are becoming happy and getting girlfriends, moving on with their life, and just being happy all the time, and I was still miserable and I didn't understand why. So um I was getting in a dark place again, but the one thing that was lifted from me was the thought to drink and drug. It just wasn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the right things, and now I had to shift the focus a little bit, and that's where I like to refer to it as switching the addiction. I knew I wanted to live this life. I knew there were good things that were out there for me, but I needed to figure out why I was so miserable, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the compulsion to drink and drug anymore. Everything There was everything good going on in my life, but I would catastrophize a lot, and I would always think something bad was going to happen, and um, still in such a dark place. So I started seeing different therapists, and I couldn't really find one that fit for me. And I find finding a therapist is like a job interview in itself.
Yes.
You know, yeah, some you connect with, some you don't, and so I moved on into my theater, and started working with different people, and eventually found that group of people that I needed. Um, I will mention though that so I met my wife Leslie in I was only 3 months sober that
Mm.
she was introduced to me,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not supposed to do that. By the way, anybody out there, they say
Yeah.
not to date or do anything like that for the first year. Get your life in order, find out who you are first.
Yeah.
But this was just so, the way it all unfolded, I truly believe like she was sent to me to be there to be that strong person in my life that
Yeah.
I wasn't yet, so that I could heal. And um, what a blessing that was, because um, yeah, she was there for me right from the beginning, watching me go through all my struggles. Still to this day, she's right there to um, help me get through that stuff. And um, that was just the most one of the most amazing things that happened to me. And at first, my sponsor, because he's there to, what are you doing, but when I told him the story of how we met and everything, and he was just blown away. And then he started to believe that, oh wow, okay, there's something else at play here, and who am I to step in and intervene? So
Yeah.
he stopped, and we're all really good friends now. Um, and yeah, it's just, he talks about how amazing that whole process is. So um, when when you know something's right, you,
Yeah.
um,
Everything happens for a reason.
Leslie was the type of person, uh, um, like when I came over to her house, she had this picture on her fridge of this house, and I said, "What is that house there?" And she said, "Oh, that's I'm manifesting. That's the house I want to build one day." And I was like, "Oh, wow, cool." So I started. looking into manifesting, and she was all about healing and all these things, meditation, breath work, like all this stuff. And it just kind of fit with where I was trying to go in life. And so I started looking up manifesting, looking up different things. How can I heal? How can I get to a place where I'm actually enjoying my life? And we actually built that house, by the way.
I love that. That is just such a cool story.
We did take that. We did achieve that goal. So
That's cool.
um, for sure. Um, so yeah, so I switched the obsession. Instead of looking for drugs and alcohol, I was looking for how can I become happy in this world, and live out the rest of my days in a better way. And so I started into therapy, and I was finding as my work career continued in my sobriety, I was getting angry a lot, and I felt like people were questioning me when they weren't, and um, I was projecting that, like, if certain things happened, like um, a look or a tone of voice, or I just took it as questioning, and I would just instantly get angry and impulsively act out, and then I would feel like a bag of crap, right? Like, it's like, what did I just do? And what was happening? I got to look more into this. So I started writing things down and bringing it to my therapist. And I have this amazing therapist now, Shannon. And I started with that. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and Shannon and another facilitator were running that group. That's how I got introduced to her. And then I moved from that to dialectical behavioral therapy. So I started diving into, okay, why am I doing these things? What can I do next? Learning little techniques to cope, and all really good ideas when you're in that heightened state of how to get out of it. And some I'm getting better at it now. Sometimes it's faster than others, but the key is I stuck with it, and I became so focused on how I could better my life. So I still see Shannon. It varies to what I'm going through, but weekly, bi-weekly,
Hmm.
and we just have that continued. I have that continued support through her, and so it was through that we started doing EMDR therapy, and so I had the buzzers in my hands, and like they would buzz, and I
Do you
think
want
the
to
idea is,
explain? Yeah, can you explain a little bit what that is for our viewers who don't know what that is?
yeah, absolutely. So from my basically my experience to what it is they alternate vibrations in your hands. There's different ways to do it, but this is what I had. So they would vibrate like alternately, and I believe the focus was it keeps the right and left side of your brain occupied, so you can dip into the memory bank. And so through this therapy with her, she would ask me what's coming up for me. What am I thinking? She didn't do a lot of talking. It was just more, um, she would guide me,
Hmm.
and then what's coming up for you right now. And she would wait, and then I would start to jitter a little bit, and she could tell something was there. What's
Hmm.
in your mind right now? What do you think? And I would just blah. You just, um, I just started saying things, and through this therapy is when I realized that I had some different traumas from growing up.
Hmm.
And what had happened was, because I was drinking and drugging at such a young age, very impressionable, very just wanted to um, fit in, and just in those blackouts, I put myself in some very vulnerable situations, which led to um, some increased trauma
Hmm.
as from what I had already had. So it was like, whoa, um, this is crazy, and I didn't even remember that. And then I would beat myself up. Why didn't I remember such important things? And and then it became like very traumatizing, and I started focusing all on the negative, and like, why,
Okay.
how could I do this, and all that. Like, remember when I said that the morning after drinking and drugging, I would have that just be haunted through what I did. Well,
Right.
that started to resurface, and I got back in a dark place. Only this time, not having the thought of going back to drinking and drugging, I switched that to, okay, I got to get through this. I'm getting in a dark place again. And Shannon and I started working really hard on a bunch of different things, and I was I was just getting back into such a depressive state. And so through continued work with Shannon, she said, "Hey, I have a question for you." And she said, "I met this really cool doctor, and she does some psychedelic therapies." And she said, when I was talking to her more about it, I realized that you might be a perfect fit for that. And I said, "Oh, really? What's it about?" Right. And my first thought was, oh, another drug. I've been sober for this long.
Mm-hmm.
But after meeting with the doctor, I had to do a session with her and my therapist to see if I was a good fit for that particular program. And it turned out I did. And I said, my fear is that um, I'm an addict, right? So will I become more addicted to this? And what are people going to think of me? It was always about what are people going to
Oh
think of me?
yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, and how can I step back into a 12-step room if I do this? Well, the thing is I'm being guided under a doctor. And what they helped me realize is I'm not taking it recreationally and I'm not buying it off the street. Um, but basically, what it came down to was you show me one drug addict that is addicted to mushrooms and LSD and all this other stuff. Sure, it's fun to do once in a while, but for somebody to pick up and do all the time, it's work
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know what visions you're having. If you're in a bad state, you're going to have a horrible experience. And when I had done, like in the past, when I had done mushrooms, I was just in such a dark place all the time. Like it was just fearful. It was the worst thing ever. I wasn't touching it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they brought this up, that's the thought that came is like, I can't do that because when I was younger, this happened and this happened. Well, the difference is you're in a safe place. You're with a doctor that is going to do it. And my therapist was at a few of my sessions and or at two, I think actually. But um, nonetheless, I started doing it, and wow, what an eye opener! It it really it strips you of your ego for one. So if you have the boys don't cry thing like I had
Mm-hmm.
and suffer through and hold everything internally until you need to explode on somebody,
Yeah, been there.
um, yeah, all that's gone. So and it's really neat how they do it. So the my doctor's in there the whole time, and it's through IV, and the sessions last about 3.5 to 4 hours. Um, and she leads you in with all this good stuff. She makes you pick words like magical, mystical. It's just like basically she's just overflowing you with good stuff to lead you into the experience. And then all of a sudden, it's like having an out of body experience.
Mm-hmm.
You can come back to the room at any time, but you just really focus on the brain. And so, again, I can only speak to my experience, but what it felt like for me was um, the whole process is about opening up new neural pathways and get you out of that routine way of thinking. So I was stuck in such a negative pattern, haunted from the past, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all I was doing every single day. Um, this here, she's overflowing you with the good stuff. Your brain's going into this psychedelic experience, and it's really the guide. Like they can guide you, they can lead you in with the good stuff, but your brain's going to take you where you need to go. And that's the cool part about it is because the way we started it was we did 6 sessions back to back, one
Mm-hmm.
every week over 6 weeks, and um, and then we would take a bit of a break after that, but just to refocus and see. And she asked me to take notes throughout all of my sessions. So there was a lot of fear there. Like after the first two, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. It's a lot of work. Um, but I wasn't letting go fully because I still had that hesitation that am I doing something wrong? I'm putting a drug in my body. What are people going to think of me? I
Mm-hmm.
needed to let go of all that stuff in order to really get through that fear. And it's designed that way to let go of the ego, see things that that you need to see, work through them with your doctor right there. And how that process works is they hook me up to a blood pressure monitor, and then I have the IV in with the ketamine. So it cycles through, and she can see when I'm having an experience because my heart rate it will escalate basically. And she lets me go through it now, whatever that is. And with the ego not attached, I cry, and she lets me go through it because she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to interrupt what's happening in the moment. And then once my heart rate starts to normalize a bit, she'll ask, "Hey, Kris, what happened there?" And you have a blindfold on. The room's dark. There's fancy music playing. It's really cool. Um, and when she talks to you, you're right back in the room. Like you come back out of the out of body experience, and you're able to tell, like, "Oh man, this happened," and I was able to see parts of my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm watching from an outside perspective, and um, I could see me as a little person and adult figures in my life there, and like traumatic situations that I'd forgotten about.
Okay.
But then as they start coming up, you start to realize, oh, that actually did happen, and I buried that. And
Wow.
yeah, so it allows you to see as if you're watching your past memory on
Mm-hmm.
TV as if it was video recorded. It is amazing.
That is cool.
So, so as I went through this process, I there was a lot of fear and darkness, and there was a lot of dark figures and whispers, like just and scare the crap out of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was crazy, and I was like, "What is all this stuff?" And then, but just being able to see your memories is
Mm-hmm.
the best way I can explain it,
Sure.
and then work through that stuff just to get it out of your body because you store that stuff. Somebody explained to me once, it's like taking a 10-pound weight and just putting it on your body, and then
And that's
taking
not
another
good
piece
for
and
you.
putting it on your body.
Yeah.
No, and that's where disease kicks in, from
Yes.
what I hear,
Yes.
because you're storing those thoughts and feelings in certain areas, and they're not allowed to function properly. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe, anyway, that's how that works. And so I needed to get rid of it. And as we're going through these sessions, I was saying to Leslie, because she had to take me down to Toronto to
Mm-hmm.
do this, and it became it's a fun thing for us now because when I go down there, we make a day of it, and she goes shopping, and I go off to La La Land.
That's great.
But the cool part about this is where it led me and the journey that was about to unfold for me. Because now my focus was, all right, I'm okay now. I can let go, and I don't need to worry about what people think of me. It's none of their business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a key piece in letting go. Because when you're going into a ketamine experience or a psychedelic experience, your brain's going to focus on the trip's going to be focused on what your brain is thinking at the moment. So if I'm going in, the first couple I went in with all fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then all fearful things were coming up.
Right.
But they needed to, in the time, to get rid of all that stuff from the past
Yeah.
and allow me to move forward. So what happened was I was on my fifth week, and I had a really cool experience. I actually had some fun in there. I was in the trip, and this is the one where I'll bring this up just because it's such a fun thing. But
It's a great
I'm
thing.
I'm in the I'm in the middle of the session, and Theo Flurry pops. Oh, right, and you'll remember this one because we
Yeah.
did a video call about this.
Yeah.
Because for the first time, so that fifth week, I had worked through some really hard stuff in the past four sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and the first part of this started out really dark on the fifth session. And then all of a sudden there's Theo Flurry, and he's like, "Hey, come on."
I love that.
and he's talking to me, and it's his voice, it's his body, his whole, and I'm like, come on, where are we going? And that's what he said. It was the oh geez, I can't even think of the word. Oh, the astral plane.
Right,
We're going
right.
up to the astral plane.
Yeah,
And then he just disappeared. And I was like, what? And then all of a sudden I'm up there with him. And then there was you and Kelly
yeah,
and Theo up there. And then Theo was like, oh, we're all energy.
yes.
we're,
And he's not
and we're,
wrong.
yeah, we're all energy, and we're all connected. Three of us are connected. And then that's when he said, we're each going to give you a word, and you can ask us, and we're going to tell you that word. And I was excited. I was like,
Mhm.
really? And that's when I believe Theo gave me, um, what did he say? Flames and eternity, I think it was. And then you gave me Ruby,
Mhm.
and then Kelly was Blue Hatchet.
That's great. Yeah.
So I was so excited, right? So then all of a sudden, then that disappeared, and then I was kind of in like this lull of a moment, and I was like kind of sad. I'm like, Jody and Kelly and Theo are gone now. What's happening? Did that just happen? But then what I did was right in the middle of the experience, I pulled the mask up and I grabbed my phone because the last thing Theo said was, "Ask us. We're gonna we'll tell you. Just ask us." And
Right.
so I was like, oh, I was a little confused, and I reached into my bag, and my doctor's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I got to message Theo,"
That's great.
and she's like, "How about we just wait a little bit, right?"
Yeah.
But she's like, "You can message him later." So, anyways, that was the first little bout of fun through all the hard work I just did. That was and I was like, "That's crazy." And what was happening was I was getting rid of all the stuff, and my brain was creating new neurotransmitters were fighting
Mhm.
or were coming through and allowing me to start think a little differently. And that was a massive moment because that's what this whole thing is designed to do, in my opinion. Create those new neural pathways, allow you to think differently, and get rid of all that other stuff.
Right.
So, and then I came back for my sixth session the week after, and we went through it, and that was a dark one. There was a lot of dark in that, shadowy figures and whispers and everything. And so at the end of that session, that's when my doctor said to me, you're having a lot of fearful things come up and a lot of darkness, whispering, shadowy figures. Um, at times I'd be at home and it'd be like, there's somebody there or something. Like I just had this fear, and I kept telling her all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so that's at the end of that session. Um, she said to me, "Have you ever heard of ayahuasca?" And I said, "I've heard the term, but I don't know much about it." And she said, "I think it'd be very healing for you. It's a very powerful psychedelic." But she said, "I don't want you going to find a place in Toronto to do it in a basement somewhere.
Right.
You need to do this with a shaman, and they're designed to help you get through that stuff." Because she said, "I can help you get through some of your traumatic stuff, but whatever this darkness and these shadowy figures and I think it'd be helpful just to keep in mind, to maybe try sometime."
So do you want to explain to everybody what ayahuasca is, just in case they haven't heard of it?
Oh, absolutely. So ayahuasca, um, if I understand correctly, it's been around for a long time. It's a plant medicine. Um, but what it is it's a bark from a tree and a plant from a tree, but apparently they're 500 miles apart in the rainforest. And I guess, if I'm telling this correctly, I guess way back when, um, it was a vision to put these two together, and it creates ayahuasca, which is a drink, and like it's all plants and like all natural stuff, and it would create this psychedelic experience in you and help you heal. And different tribes will do things a little bit differently. But the tribe I was introduced to, their whole focus is on joy and happiness. Apparently, some tribes will want you to sit and just focus on whatever comes up. This tribe I met, they were all about joy and happiness and dancing and getting together, like togetherness and locking arms and just doing a circle and music. And now how that happened is, like, if you're interested in ayahuasca, it was explained to me like this. You need to be called to it. And when I say that is it'll find you, like it did for me. And what happened, it was so powerful in this moment because my doctor was telling me about it at the end of my 6th ketamine session. And all that was going through my mind was, because she said, like I said, you're not going to do it in a basement in Toronto. Find a tribe somewhere, Costa Rica, Peru, Brazil, and do it with them and just do some research. And I said, okay. But what was going through my head was, okay, now I got to tell Leslie, hey, here's yet another thing I want to do. Right? And
That's great. How about this?
I was so fearful to tell her, right? Because, and so what happened was I come down and just like every other session, she's like, how did the session go? And I was like, oh, it was, pretty dark and shadowy figures again. And I said, but there was one thing, and I got really hesitant, and she's looking, and I said, and she's like, spit it out. And I'm like, I know what you're gonna say because I know everything, don't you know? And she's like, what? And so I told her about the ayahuasca, and she was looking at me like a deer in headlight because she had been, our friend Sarah and Jay were staying in Costa Rica for 8 months. And what I didn't realize is just recently, Sarah had reached out to Leslie and said, I met this group of people that run these retreats for ayahuasca and different types of plant medicine retreats. And she said, after talking to them, I realized that might be a perfect fit for Kris. So the way she was looking at me was like, boom. And that's what I mean by being called.
Yeah, it
If
was
there
meant
was
to
ever a
happen.
time, that's what happens. And some of the people I met, the stories they were telling me of how they were called upon ayahuasca are just mind blowing. And so what had happened was there was an opening in 2 weeks from the second I left my doctor's office to, I can remember jumping on the trauma call there, or Theo's
Oh, that's
call,
right. That's right.
telling you guys, and I
Yeah.
said, I'm booked and I'm going to Costa Rica, right? So I went into the rainforest, and first we had 2 days with Sarah and Jay, and we kind of explored Costa Rica, and it's so beautiful and such a safe country, and it felt very calming, but I was very nervous because what had happened was in my sobriety, I became such a routine individual, and I would normally just do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's why I was stuck in my misery. So in order to heal, I needed to get out of my comfort zone.
Right.
So I went to Costa Rica, and we hung out for the 2 days. And then Jay and Sarah had bought a car there, so they drove me. It was like a 3-hour trek, and I was up in all the craziest roads I've ever seen.
No, thank you. That's enough for me.
Yeah. One day, Jody, one day.
No.
So they brought me up into the rainforest, and all of a sudden there's this maloca, and this is like a massive gazebo, and it's a ceremonial grounds where they're gonna do these ayahuasca retreats. So the second I'm up there, I'm like, oh my God, my heart's just racing, and I'm like, I don't like being around new people. I'm way out of my comfort zone, and I'm 3 hours away from where Leslie's going to be, and they just dropped me here.
Yeah.
So
And
I
no.
was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So then the best I could explain it is I was there. I was the first one there. And I met the people. Now I'd done a video call with these people, so they were familiar with me. Angel was one of the owners, and she was there hugging me and welcome home, brother. And I was feeling okay. And then other people started to show up, and I think there ended up being about 20 of us. And so we actually slept on blow up mattresses in this Maloka, and the sounds of the rainforest, and it was beautiful. And so I started talking to people, and we're all talking about what brought us here and everything. And then at that particular time, they bring in different tribes, but at that particular time, it was the Yawanawa tribe from Brazil. And the beautiful thing about that is there was the father and two brothers, shaman. So the family there, and their father was there. And if I'm not mistaken, it was his first time out of Brazil, I believe, or out of Brazil to do a retreat like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had the three of them. And when they walked into the Maloka, uh, it's hard to even explain that moment. It felt like you got lifted up and spun around, like the energy they were carrying.
Wow.
And like they just ran in and literally like pushed you back. It was
Yeah.
crazy, the energy they were carrying. And their whole thing's about joy and happiness. So they explained the process, how things were going to work. And then we got into our night and we started doing the ayahuasca. Well, um, I drank the first cup. Now, you don't eat through ayahuasca. So they give you citrus water and you just drink that because the if I can say it correctly, it's you're going to get the strongest healing when your body's at your weakest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ayahuasca, when you drink it, maybe not for all people, but you can vomit, or you got to get rid of all the stuff you're carrying, and that's what it does at first. And then all of a sudden, you're in this psychedelic state, and they bring you up, and they're playing music and drums and all these beats, and uh, they're such phenomenal musicians, and they just sing, and the tones of their voice, the
Mm-hmm.
way they can carry their voices and the different like higher, like the different pitches, it just really grabs you and pulls you in. And then you're in this chant circle, and you're going around and around, and then they release you out to dance or sit if you want, and they'll give you breaks from the circle basically, but they want you up and dancing and experiencing the joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it got very fearful for me because all of a sudden I was having the dark shadows and the whispers,
Yeah.
and it was so scary. Um, and I ended up having uh, the most healing experience of my life. But in the moment, I was like, I can't do this. This is
Yeah.
freaking me out.
Yeah.
But there's people there to help you, and there's helpers, and they come and talk to you, and they're like, "What's happening? What's going on?" And they guide you through different experiences and how to get out of it. And they tell you there's a ceremonial fire, and anything you're holding on to, you can go ask, because everything's spirit of the fire, spirit of the
Mm-hmm.
tobacco, spirit of ayahuasca, grandmother ayahuasca, they call her.
I love it.
And she's working within you to get rid of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they told me to go sit by the fire and release all these negative feelings into the fire. And then you start to come down off your trip, and then you drink a second cup,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're right back into it again, right? Um, but everything just becomes so clear, and visions will come and go, but right in front of you, you could be in the chant circle and you're looking at other people, and all of a sudden all these visions are coming out, right? It's so
Wow.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Psychedelic geometry and patterns, and um when you can get to that state and let go. I wasn't ready to let go yet because there was still stuff in me
Mm-hmm.
that I needed to get rid of first. um so then we did 2 nights of ayahuasca ceremonies. And then the second night was a little bit better. The shaman came and saw me, and the next day, like throughout the first night, he did too. But the next day, um, they speak their language and then Portuguese, so they had an interpreter with
Okay.
them. So he was explaining, don't fear the ayahuasca, just let go. Everything's gonna happen. And they were so caring and loving, and him and I really hit it off. And at the end of the 2 days, he invited a group of us to go to Brazil in June. So we went. I was there in February, and then he said he's having a retreat in the Amazon at their village. And so I was like, oh wow, and we connected so well, and shared a lot of tears, and it was so healing. And I was like, wow, okay, this. Uh, and everybody was so loving, like, and it just felt like you knew everybody
Yeah.
from previous, and um, so then we carried on the rest of our trip in Costa Rica, and then we had decided that I was going to go to Brazil as well. We started looking into that. But I just want to mention they were doing a lot of energy healing. So that while we were waiting for our second ceremony to take place on the second night in Costa Rica, they were doing sound bowl therapy, tuning fork therapy. They had us lay on the beds with our heads toward the girl named Sarah, and she had all these sound bowls out, and we were just to lay facing, like looking up with our heads towards, and like it literally felt like it was lifting you off the bed, and like it was just crazy, the experience. So healing, and it was a big thing for me to let go of that fear and go into the second ceremony, because if I had a vehicle I would have left,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I was out of my comfort zone and I didn't want to have that fear anymore, because now ayahuasca was a little bit more powerful than the ketamine, in the sense of the visions, and that fear really, like I said before, my brain I was in a new place, I was around new people, and seeing visions, and there's a lot of uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
and then my brain was focusing on some negative things, which is okay. At the time I didn't believe so, but
Mm-hmm.
I needed to go through that, and then be able to spend the next day in Costa Rica telling people that, what my experience was like, and them just saying it's okay, and hugging you, and just really out of my comfort zone. But it was like, okay, you know what, I feel at home here, and everybody's laughing and doing these energy healings, and it was so beautiful. And that led into my second ceremony, where I had some fearful things come up, but it was more, I focused more on staying up in the circle, and
Mm-hmm.
changing the focus. And they said, they kept telling us, if you're having a fearful experience, get up and move, because the second you get up and move and do something different, your brain's going to shift the focus onto what you're doing next. So don't lay there and suffer through whatever
Makes
you're
sense.
going through, right?
Totally makes
Yeah,
sense.
so absolutely. So made some really strong connections. I have a lot of good friends in that little community now, and that led to the shaman inviting me and a group of others to go to Brazil, to his village. And I knew I had to go. I kept in contact with him. The shaman would video call me, and I'd be like, and he would pretend there was no interpreter there, and he would just come on the video call and then start talking to me in Portuguese, and I was like,
That's
and then he'd be
great.
laughing, and then he'd pass it over to the interpreter, right? So these guys are really funny, and so knowledgeable. And in Costa Rica, just to be able to experience that with a family of shaman, right? The
Mm-hmm.
father teaching his sons what to do next, right? And it was just an amazing thing to be a part of, and made some lifelong friendships in the process. So I felt very honored to be invited to his village, and I said to Leslie, like, I got to do this, and I was going to go on my own, and that was a fear in itself, because I'm going to a country that I don't speak the language. I not only have to fly, like it was many different flights,
Mm-hmm.
the 10-hour, Toronto to Georgia, to Georgia to Sao Paulo, Brazil, a 10-hour flight, um, land there. And I only had 2 hours to scoot across to Terminal 2, and I didn't understand the language, and I had to get through and take an interior flight for another 4 hours to a different area,
Yeah,
right?
that's hardcore.
So, yeah, it was fear. Thing was is that Leslie said, "Are you going on your own for this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have to, right?" So then this is the first time. I never told my sponsor from the 12-step program that I was going to do ayahuasca. He knew I was going to Costa Rica. He didn't know what I was doing, because I didn't want to taint my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want somebody else's perspective on what it was. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go in and do it. And so after the Costa Rica trip, I went to see him, and he lives a couple hours away. So I drove there, and I was hemming and hawing about what I was going to say. And I just outright told him that I went to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca. And he was intrigued because he had seen a light in my eyes that he hadn't seen before. And
Fair. Yeah.
oft, oftentimes people see changes in you before you see them yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so many times in my sobriety that, other people tell me something and I didn't even realize it myself. Hey,
Yeah.
you're carrying yourself a little differently. You're talking differently.
Right.
Um, so he just saw this light in my eyes. And before I even said I went to do ayahuasca, he said, "What the hell have you been doing? Because you're carrying yourself a little different and there's this light in your eye." And so I told him what I was doing. And then I said, and I'm going to Brazil in June in the Amazon rainforest to their village. And he said, when do we leave?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So the guy who was there in the hospital with me
Right.
when I woke up from all those things, who helped me into my sobriety, now he's coming to be on the next leg of our journey in
Yes.
sobriety together.
Yes. Powerful.
Yeah. So because he was after that, he wanted to experience whatever it was I did and the healing for himself as well. So we went. Leslie felt a lot better. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't want me to go by myself, so she felt a lot better.
Yeah, fair.
And it was kind of funny too, because she said to me, I said, I have to pay the money for my Brazil trip right away so they can start getting organized, because it's a long journey to the village, so they need to have the
Mm-hmm.
money. And she said to me, before I even talked to Phil, she said, there's only one person in this world that I would be okay with you going on this trip with.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said to herself, she told me this after, like she was thinking this. She said
Yeah.
that piece, um, and then I went and talked to Phil, and he wanted to go. So I came home, and yet again, being called to
Yeah.
ayahuasca,
Yeah.
she's like, she says, "Are you kidding me?" Actually, her initial thought was, "Shit, what?" And she said, "I had thought the only
Yeah.
person you could go with is Phil."
It all happens for a reason. Yep.
Yeah, so we were told just to take carry-ons and pack light and go, right? So we did, and we slept in hammocks, and such a long journey to get there. But when I'll have to show you the video sometime, Jody.
Mm-hmm.
Of we were in the boats, and I was videoing from my phone because they stopped the boats and we all got together, because it was a 5-hour journey up the river to the village, and so we all stopped. And then they were talking to the interpreter, and the interpreter said, "Okay, we're going to come around the corner to where their village is now, and so everybody get ready." So all boats came in a line, and we're coming across, and all of the whole tribe was up on the edge of the cliff,
Yeah.
singing and dancing, and all this
Oh,
smoke in the air, and it
that's
was just like,
crazy.
just made you cry.
Yeah.
And it was the welcome party. And so
That's
they got all of our bags up the side of the cliff, and we came up the stairs, and it was just on the dancing, the music, the laughter, and just to be a part of that was absolutely phenomenal. Like, where generations and generations of Yawanawa tribes people have walked in that untouched part of land. Like, I mean, not untouched, but it was them, right? All
mm-hmm.
their villages are lined up along the riverbank, and just to be there and be a part of that was absolutely phenomenal. And then we got to take part in their um, like traditional games, mud baths, herbal baths, all these things. I got to go spearfishing with the hunters
Yeah. It's
and see
awesome.
how they do all that. Like,
Yeah.
just such a great experience. And but so part of this whole journey was we would do 4 ayahuasca ceremonies in their village, as they do. They invited different tribes to come in too, um, to experience us in their land.
Mm-hmm.
um, so there was quite a lot of people. Um, Even the kids were doing ayahuasca. Like,
Wow.
I don't know the age, but they weren't like real young. Like, I'm thinking maybe some of them look like 8 or 9 years old, but that's
Mm-hmm.
their way of life.
Holy cow.
They do it on Saturday night, and that's their little party. They make a day of it, traditional games, and then they do ayahuasca ceremony at night.
Mm-hmm.
Now those ceremonies last from about 8 p.m. until sunrise. And there we drank ayahuasca 3 times
Mm-hmm.
in the night. So what was happening was the process was we would do their traditional medicine with Hona, the one shaman, with his uncle. Now, the morning of an ayahuasca ceremony, we would do what's called combo. And combo is a tree frog poison.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So traditionally, again, like I said, you're gonna get the most healing when your body's at your weakest.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no food. Like you obviously we ate there, but I mean not on ayahuasca ceremony day, just
Mm-hmm.
very light. Because we were there, we just got like a soup, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing crazy. Um, and normally they wouldn't eat. So we would do combo. So 5 in the morning, we would go down to they would take us across on the boats on the other side of the riverbank. Now, and then they would make you drink katsuma, which is it's like a boiled. They eat it too, but it's like a tree. It's a plant. I think it's almost the consistency of a potato, like a hard
Oh,
potato.
okay. Yeah.
But they boil it, and they get this katsuma, and then you have to drink like 2 liters of this stuff, and your stomach's distended.
Yeah.
Because what happens is the frog poison. They take this little stick and they burn your skin,
Mm-hmm.
and then they put the frog poison on you, and then you just go and kneel by the riverbank. It's not warm. Brazil is hot. I thought it was going to be scorching heat the whole time.
Yeah.
No, when the sun goes down in the rainforest, it's pretty cold actually.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
So you're on the edge of the riverbank, kneeling in water in the morning. You're hungry, you're cold, and you got this on you. Now, what this is designed to do, and again, this is all my interpretation of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the frog poison cycles through your body, and your hands will get puffy, your feet will get puffy, and it cycles through your body and collects all the toxins
Mm-hmm.
and brings them to your stomach, and then you will vomit.
Mm-hmm.
The whole process lasts about 30 to 40 minutes, and it is hellish.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you have completed the whole process, you feel the best you've ever felt in your life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there's different things that go along with it, and hopefully I don't make anybody queasy, but it, in the vomit, I had a lot of. It looked like yellow Gatorade, and they were explaining to me
Oh,
that
right.
would be like toxins in the body, and different people had different things. Um, there was a story of a woman who, in the beginning of the process, not at my particular one, but one they did before, that she was vomiting black, and then it would mold over, and it was my understanding that they said that would have turned into a disease.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And by the end of, because we did combo 3 times there,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're considered kind of cleansed. And so, anyways, I guess by the end of it, her vomit was clearer, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so all that toxins were out of her body, right? And they explained that that's when you store stuff, like all these things that we carry and store,
Yeah.
like anger, hurt, trauma. It builds like that, and so it's very, very healing to do, and you feel so good after. And sorry for the in-depth explanation on that
No,
one.
that's really interesting though, because that makes such total sense, right?
Yeah. So we would do that, and then we would go over, and then we did Sananga. So they gave us a little bit of a break, and they made us coffee. And oh my God, they grow everything there. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
grown right there, right? So
Yeah.
we're allowed to have a cup of coffee because ayahuasca ceremony is at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sananga, they don't wear glasses.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Sananga is a chopped up root and they extract the juices from it, and then they like it's like a sap, I guess, from
Mm-hmm.
this root. So they showed us how they made it, and the medicine man was chopping it up, and then they drain it into this little vial, and then they drop it in the corner of your eyes. Your eyes are closed at first,
Yeah.
and then they ask you to open them. Well, it feels like a million needles are stabbing you.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Now, they all do this on a regular basis, but it sharpens your vision and enhances everything. Um, so the hunters would normally take this before the hunt because it really enhances their vision,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to see things better in the forest. And um, it's just it's not a pleasant experience, but again, as soon as it's over, um, you feel so good and your vision is so sharp, and like they don't wear glasses.
That's
So
insane.
all these things that we've developed in our own culture, like go to an eye doctor, go to here, go do
Mm-hmm.
this, go do um, different types of treatment for different types of illnesses that we have.
Mm-hmm.
They have everything right there.
Right.
A lot of our or all of our medication comes from the rainforest.
Mhm. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all derived from those plants
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So um, these are all things they do, and they um, healing hurts.
It's hard, and it's hard work, right? You
Yeah,
got to get out of that comfort zone.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of fearful things, but again, the whole time you're going through these things, they're just playing music.
Yeah.
And like 6 in the morning, the kids are playing the music, and they're on the guitars and the drums, and they're so good, like
Yeah.
little kids.
That's great.
They're just, it's their whole culture, and I'm
Right.
just so grateful I got to be a part of it. Um, and then, so we would get to the ayahuasca ceremonies. Now, I can quickly go through that since you already know what ayahuasca is. But I was getting a lot of darkness, shadows, whispers. But I kept focusing on the other people, and it was starting to scare me because it was like, why am I okay? Focus on the visions, get in the circle. But I was running away and trying to be on my own
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't sure what was happening, and I didn't want to get embarrassed or have people look at me funny because that was my whole life, right?
Right, right, right.
I'll try and run away, be alone so that nobody can see me suffer.
Right.
Only now I'm running into the rainforest and trying to hide from well,
Mm-hmm.
it's a dangerous place, right?
Not the best
So they're
idea.
coming to get me.
Yeah.
They're coming to get me. And they were so good because they had people watching us, and you were safe and protected the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But so they helped me get through my journey and so much fear and so much hurt and pain. Um, so we would go through the sessions, and um, no social media, no phones, no like. Yeah, I just had to like when I could take videos at sometimes and pictures, obviously, but um, just that in itself was so healing because technology is all around us, right?
Right, right.
So just being able to sit with myself, and outside of ayahuasca, I would just journal on my experience
I
and what
love
it
that.
was and what was
Yeah.
going on.
I love that.
Yeah, so I was there 11 days in the village
Mm-hmm.
and came out, and we um, we came out, and I came back, and I was so full of fear, and I thought I'm never doing that again.
Right. I remember you saying that.
Yeah. But here's what I realized. I said to my doctor, I can't do that. I didn't feel safe and protected. And what I had done was I felt so safe and protected with ketamine because I was in my doctor's office with
Right.
just her closed room.
Yeah.
Now I'm in an entirely different environment. I'm in with a group of people I don't know in a village with a language I don't understand,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't go home and hide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was so healing in the self that in the days after the ayahuasca journeys, I would just journal and spew all the stuff that was happening, and so much darkness and whispers and whispers. And
Yeah.
so I said to my doctor, I don't think I can do it again. And I started doing ketamine therapy with her. Well, I never stopped doing ketamine therapy with her, but we continued that
Yeah.
journey. And she said, it's because you feel safe with me in a closed room and there's nobody else and you know the process. She said, remember, you're very routine.
Yeah.
So I started working again. Here's what I discovered. the shadowy figures and the whispers ended up being me. It was my
Mm,
internal self.
yes.
I had I had so much fear and anxiety and depression and hurt, and I had created this internal person
Mm-hmm.
to protect me. And what it would do is, no, don't do that. You can't do that. Don't
Mm-hmm.
do that. And it would just be like these little voices in my head.
For
Not
sure.
they just come in thought. It's not like actual.
Yeah.
But and it would be like, oh, you got to watch out. Oh, watch out for that guy. Watch out for this. And um, because that's what I created throughout my life, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where sorry, I forgot to mention my complex PTSD from my lifelong journey in drugs and alcohol and the things
Right.
I had done and experienced. So it ended up being just me. It
I
was
get
trying to
that.
get me away from it, get me where I can be safe and protected, where I'm alone in the dark, where all these bad negative parts in this person or in this voice I created to protect me was like, sometimes it'd be like, go back to drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
That's where you're safe. That's where you're safe, just alone, where nobody's around you, right? You can't get hurt if you're not around anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what it was trying to do was get me alone. And what was happening? I was scared. I would leave the safety of the group of people and run to try and be alone, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm being tortured by this thing I had created early on in life,
Right.
trying to get me alone, where I
Mm-hmm.
could be vulnerable and go back to what was safe. Like, it's crazy how the addictive mind works.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that makes sense. If
Yeah, it does. And it feels like, like when you're in the drugs and alcohol and the world of addiction, that was to quiet those voices, right? To numb that
mhm,
pain and quiet the voices. And
mhm.
how do you get to that place of self-worth? Because
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, so that's where, like, I mean, all the things that you've done has been like a almost like a trauma detox so that you can shed all of that crap and discover that self-worth too.
Oh, absolutely. And what it was a routine pattern of thinking, and that voice, like, so when I left the village saying I'm never doing that again, I love the people, I miss the people, I wish they
Mm-hmm.
were closer, I would hang out. But what happened when I started doing ketamine with my doctor again and found that particular piece out,
Mm-hmm.
everything changed. My ketamine experience changed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the fearful thoughts anymore. I don't have that little voice anymore. I don't
Right.
have those little shadowy like
Oh
it's
yeah.
the whispers trying to get me alone.
Name it to tame
Um
it, right?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the thing, well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. There are times where I battle each day. Each day is a lot of work. It's not easy
Yeah.
healing. When you're changing your entire amount of years you've been on this earth,
Mm-hmm.
when you've had more years of trauma and pain, that's already built into your brain.
Yeah,
Like, you
that's
can't
hardwired.
it yeah, so you got to change that. And that's where the psychedelic therapy comes in, because I'm opening up those new neural pathways and starting to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I carry myself differently now. And since I figured out that it was just me,
Mm-hmm.
it was a big relief because
For sure.
um and a weight off my shoulders. So now when I do my ketamine sessions, I can completely let go, and like I'm telling you, I'm flying through mountaintops. Whatever comes up, but
Yeah,
it's just so beautiful now.
I
I
love
don't
it.
have the fear to go back to. I've worked through that stuff.
Yeah.
I've let go of it, and now it's focusing on the good.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like when you can really let go in those psychedelic experiences, your mind can take you to places like, it feels like you're actually flying through the mountains, like,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just smiling and laughing and no ego. So it's not like, is my doctor thinking I look like an idiot? Like,
Right, right.
things I would tell myself, right?
Right, right.
No, she's just so happy, the joy that you're actually getting some healing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now that I'm in that place, will I do ayahuasca again? Absolutely.
That's
The
excellent.
shaman's already reached, he's already reached out to me, the shaman, and he's like, hey, it's calling you, it's
When are you
calling you.
coming back? So when is your next trip down there then?
I haven't booked anything yet, but when it'll come to me when I'm
Yeah,
ready.
when it's time.
Um, yeah, so now yeah, and I'm doing some different, or I'm doing my ketamine sessions still, but it's just so beautiful to be able to do that and let go, and it gives my brain a break from
Mm-hmm.
my regular routine. So most recently, I was having some different patterns in thinking, and I wasn't sure what was happening in my um, um I don't have to go in too much detail about it, but basically, the way my brain worked my whole life is, no matter what job I was doing, if there was something to be troubleshooted, for some reason, I would just be able to figure it out rather quickly, even if I've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting caught in these patterns of thinking, and this is recent too. Like it's been throughout my whole sobriety, but most recently as well. Like each day is a lot of work to stay. Um, you can't be joyful and happy all the time. There has to be some
Right.
pain and hurt and everything.
Yeah.
It's life. So Um, but I was getting stuck in these random ways of thinking, and then I never understood why I just knew how to do things sometimes. And after doing some testing with my doctor, I ended up realizing that I went with undiagnosed high functioning autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've just discovered that in the past couple months. And she did a bunch of testing with me. And now we're working on how to cope with that.
Mm-hmm.
What was happening was the reason I knew how to do certain things is because the way my neurodiverse brain works is I can watch a show and see somebody fix something, or see somebody fix something at work, or um, see all these different things, and my brain takes those little pieces of information and puts them in little compartments, basically.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it could be years, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm doing something at work, and it's like, oh, this electrical outlet is not working, and I'm just able to very quickly figure it out. And so she started giving me information on autism and how it works. And she gave me a whole bunch of stuff I needed to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, you'll know what fits with you for your
Yeah.
type of neurodiverse brain. So when I started reading it, it made so much sense.
That's amazing. You're like the
Yeah, like,
bionic man, really.
yeah. But again, it's another piece to the puzzle that
Yes.
unfolds. And at first I was hurt by it because I didn't just get it and develop it. I've had it my whole life. So many things made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Why I felt different. And she actually, my doctor told me actually that she said, you were dealing with so much and undiagnosed with it that the pain and hurt and suffering I was experiencing,
Yeah.
I developed a way to deal with it and cope with it. So she said, your neurodiverse mind found that, oh, with alcohol and drugs, um, oh, I can get through this. I can have
Right.
little bits of happiness and joy, and that's what I needed at the time. I'm not saying
Fair.
go out and try alcohol and drugs,
No, but it
but
makes total sense though, doesn't it? Because it was your way to
yeah,
cope and get through shit.
yeah. And without that, I wouldn't had that, right? And
Yeah.
so it was actually it helped me get through my life basically
Yes.
until I could
Yes.
get to a place where things needed to be different now,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to stop that behavior. So now I'm looking at this stuff, and it's a new piece. And just now that I'm reading these different things on neurodiversity, and I look at the past, and it's like, oh my god, like my whole way of thinking was, and well, the big thing was the routine,
Yeah.
very organized and routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to change anything. I don't want to try anything different. It'll get better one day, and it just got stuck in that vicious cycle.
Right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, the best thing I can say to anybody that is suffering, or it is hard work and it is daily work,
Yes. Yes.
and it's not always easy. But don't give up on it. Just keep. If something's not working for you, don't be scared. Release that fear,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be scared to try something new and start doing different things. It's not easy. It's not um, joyful and happy all the time. It's
Yeah.
a lot of hard work. So
And that's what I love about you so much is that you've faced such great adversity in your life through not only your childhood trauma, but dealing with the addictions and all that stuff. And then this healing journey, like you've done so much cool shit just to find your path and your healing, that a lot of people wouldn't, you know, be willing to go through, or wouldn't have the courage to go through. And your message is so great because, you know, we have, like, I mean, like Theo says often, you know, trauma is the string that binds us together. And we all have trauma and we all have issues. And it's okay to be vulnerable. And if you're vulnerable, that's when you heal, but you got to be willing to do the work, and you got to be willing to try shit. And even if one thing doesn't work, then try the next thing and be open to experiencing that. Like you say, it's not comfortable. Sometimes it's scary as hell, but you know, if you're
Mhm.
willing to open yourself up to that journey, like you're a perfect testament of what can happen if you do open yourself up to trying something different.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and it is so worth it. And along with the pain and the hurt that you're dealing with as you go through the processes, it's okay because it feels so good at the end of it.
Yes, yes. And you prove to yourself you can do hard things. And if you do
Yeah,
hard things, then that's when the magic comes. It's not by
absolutely.
doing the easy shit. It's by doing the hard stuff is when you get that magic. And look where you are now. Like, I look at your, you know, if you're telling me your journey from beginning to now, like what a transformation. And like that's just so amazing.
Oh well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, no,
so
I oh it's yeah, it's so good to be able to explain it all. And I know it took a long time, but it's I think you really need I needed to really kind of go through each experience to
yeah.
kind of get to so you can feel, you know, um as I was going through, I could feel myself get excited again and, you know, build that
Yeah,
excitement and
for sure.
just
It's
reliving that. But it's hard to explain the process of those different healing modalities
mhm.
unless I can actually explain it. So I know it took
Yeah.
longer than we probably thought, but
100% worth it. 100% worth it. It's like a movie. You know, like look at where you began. And like I even see you now from when I met you 2 years ago with Theo. Like I can see such a transformation even in the 2 years that I've known you. You know, and like Theo says, and you know, he's beyond proud of you because like you said, like you joined the call and you would never talk. And now look at you, right? Like
yeah.
that's just amazing. Like the proud, like I'm so freaking proud of you, and it's impressed and inspired by you. It's ridiculous. So good on you. Good on you, my brother. I'm proud
Oh,
to call you a friend. Yeah,
oh,
you're
same,
phenomenal.
right back at you. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're amazing as well, and to see
Uh,
where you've been too, or what you've gone through and where you're at today. And we just
yeah.
got to get you in a vehicle now and
Never.
up the mountainside.
Oh, never. Hard pass, hard pass. Yeah. Yeah. So I think our recording is going to come to an end here pretty soon. I think we run out of time again. Thank you very much,
Okay.
my friend. I just love the shit out of you. I think you're just phenomenal.
Uh,
Yeah.
love you too. I'm glad we got to do this. So.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, my friends, as always with Ordinary Joe, buy somebody coffee, pay somebody a compliment, go up the mountain, take the frog poison. And don't be afraid to try something new because you never know where it will take you for sure.